have two yeses. That's always a good thing. All right, here we go. Oh, and Elaine's there. Hi, Elaine. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we have a few people on today. And as Kevin has said, my name is Phil Tenaglia. I'm a school psychologist and a family therapist, and I'm hoping that you are here to learn about the 7 steps to turbocharge social and emotional learning. And what we will be doing is learning how to invite and connect and collaborate with young people. And by young people, I'm talking about children and teens. And then we're going to lump them together. I'm just going to call them kids because saying children and teens is kind of cumbersome. So we all know what we're talking about. So I'm hoping that those of you that are either online or watching are doing so because you do some work with kids at some point. And if either Sharon or Elaine or even Kevin wanted to chat in with a yes or a no. And the other question I would have would be, oh, Kevin's got a yes from Sharon, great. And also my question would be is, have you used the Matrix with kids? All right. Got a yes from Kevin. All right. So you may have, you may not have, you may be holding back on it. You may be thinking, oh, does it work with kids? Well, I'm here to tell you that it works like a charm with kids, and I have been using it for quite a while now. I hooked up with Kevin back in the pre-Matrix days and have been collaborating with him ever since. And my mission is to get the Matrix into as many schools and classrooms as I possibly can. So what I'm going to be up to tonight is showing you my latest evolution in terms of how I am combining the Matrix with social and emotional learning, which is a buzzword that you hear a lot about in educational circles. So I'm going to be moving the slides along here. And tonight's topic is going to be social emotional learning and the ACT Matrix. And what my intention is for those of you that are watching this is to have you use this to be able to go into a school, into a classroom, into a clinic, and be able to kind of either present it to some students or maybe present it to some staff to get some buy-in from them. It works like a charm on lots of different levels. And so like I said, this social emotional learning is a big buzzword in educational and a lot of counseling circles that I've heard about. So what I want to do before I jump into the Matrix is actually give you a little brief history of social emotional learning and then get into how the Matrix addresses the process of social emotional learning. And I'm going to shorten that up to SEL because saying social emotional learning gets to be kind of wonky after a while, and how you can be combining both of these things. And so that's what we're going to be doing. So let's just move along here. So a little bit about myself. For those of you that don't know me, I am a school psychologist. I work full-time. I am what they call embedded in the schools. I am working directly with students and with teachers throughout my day. So I'm kind of like a mad scientist over the years. I have been cooking up all types of different Matrix applications, trying them out, figuring out what's working, what's not working, and as have my staff. So I now work in a building where the majority of people are using the Matrix at some point during their day. Some of them are using it all day long. Some of them are taking it out when they need it. And it is that kind of instrument that it's there when you need it. And if you don't need it, you just keep going as long as you got the old psychological flexibility going. I also do some individual and family therapy in a private practice. I train individuals in crisis intervention in my school district, and I am a lover of all things Aikido, verbal, and so moving right along there, that we're all with the ability point or workability, like model, and though that psychological ability is the target of and using that to some social. And just to kind of back up, maybe new, we're looking at the Matrix in terms of 2 types of experiences that we are using the Matrix. And the first kind of experience that we are noticing in 5 senses, and we've been doing that since the day we were born, and all that we learn, put in through our senses, and then becomes mentally on here. And in our minds, we can read images and cognition, and all stuff that's attached to other internal experiencing through the wonderful language. So we use language to label our experience. Increasingly, we to the language inside of our head. So relate to and our kids. So we use the matrix to basically help discrimination, and we're going to get into that. And then get the purpose here. And basically, we're going to be looking at whether we're doing things to move toward who and what's important to us, and things to move yucky, uncomfortable experiences that we might have. So we're going to be looking at these ways of experiencing or discriminating, and then we're going to be applying that to the social emotional learning. So I'm going to move on. And I noticed that Kevin has said there's a bit of delay in the audio, and that will probably clear up as we go along. So thanks for that, Kevin. All right, moving right along. So we are now looking at a slide that should say social emotional learning and psychological flexibility. So back to this whole SEL thing. As I evolved the use of the matrix with young people, it occurred to me, or as we say in ACT, I derived up the idea that the matrix is also a great model of how to promote social and emotional learning. And we have been using it in just that way with the educators and counselors that I'm working with. And again, psychological flexibility here and SEL are actually kind of both pointing at very similar processes. And I had discussed this a bit in the chapter I wrote with Kevin back in the original ACT Matrix book, and now I've been kind of moving it forward from there. So in my school, I spend a lot of time with students who are struggling behaviorally and academically. So I'm wondering, those of you out there, have you ever had a child that you work with who was struggling either behaviorally or academically? And maybe one of my three guests here could just chat in whether they have or they have not. And I'll wait because I know there's a delay. Okay, got one yes from Kevin. And maybe some more will be coming in. So those of you who have, we all know how uncomfortable and how sticky that can get for us. And certainly I've been working with challenging students for most of my professional career. And what I am here to tell you is that I have found the matrix to be the best instrument for getting stuck kids moving. And David said yes too. For the matrix is the best instrument I've come across for getting stuck kids moving. And the whole idea of not telling them what to do, inviting them into the process. I work with some pretty difficult, challenging situations. And I can tell you, I have met very, very few students, and I'm probably up to into the hundreds of kids I've used this with over the years. And I can count on one hand all the ones that did not respond to it. So I am here to tell you that this thing works like a charm. So again, psychological flexibility, and that's because psychological flexibility is the same process whether you're 5 or 50. And Steve Hayes, who is the founder of ACT, has said that the outcome of ACT is a process, and that process being psychological flexibility. So when we can move in directions toward people and things that matter to us in the presence of difficult thoughts or feelings or that yucky stuff I keep talking about, emotions or urges, you are in the process of being psychologically flexible. And if we have language, we can develop and enhance that both for ourselves and for others. And that's what we're up to when we're promoting it with kids in schools. So I'm going to be walking through this, and then we're going to get into the social emotional matrix. So SEL actually comes out of the same kind of framework as psychological flexibility, as I said. And I'm going to go all the way back to the early 90s. And it really kind of started with this concept of emotional intelligence. And there was a psychologist by the name of Daniel Goleman who wrote a book by that name, Emotional Intelligence. I don't know if anybody's ever read it or heard about it, but that really kind of kicked off this whole SEL thing. And what he defined emotional intelligence as is the ability to be able to monitor your own or other people's emotions, and that it could be trained and learned, and that combining that with intelligence or cognitive ability, as he talked about, allows individuals to better be able to deal with interpersonal dynamics. So yeah, I'm good with that. So that's been kind of running around in the background of my head for many years now. And then I wanted to highlight the 5 areas that no matter where you go, these are the 5 SEL areas. So I'm giving you the quick SEL crash course so that when you get out there and give it a whirl, you'll be able to address these things and talk about them a bit. So the first one would be self-awareness, and that would basically be noticing with the matrix. And self-management is going to come out of when students and even adults are aware of their actions and noticing where their actions are taking them. They are able to become more able to self-manage. And this is really great for kids, especially kids that have acting out behaviors. The other thing that SEL approaches is social awareness. Awareness of others and how my behavior affects them and how their behavior affects me, relationship skills, and also this whole thing of responsible decision making, which I just basically call choices. So I've had all this stuff running in the background, and then we're looking at things like trying to promote social emotional learning in school, and they have this stuff called SEL curriculum. And it occurred to me that, you know what? This matrix is SEL curriculum. It's real-time social and emotional learning. So it adds something that's not in any curriculum that you will ever find, which is context. And we talk about this a lot in the ACBS world and in the ACT Matrix world. And basically with what the matrix does is we will use the context that our students are in and setting a context with the matrix. And then we're going to be adding into that context who and what's important to them. And that begins the starting point to promote SEL skills with students. So the big selling point for being a social and emotional learning pro would be to start where the learner is. And I know Kevin has talked about this in the past, and it's certainly absolutely 100% true that we have to start where they're at. And you can use it in whatever context you are in with learners. We don't just have to pull out a book or a manual or a protocol. We're going to be using it wherever we need it. And if you have it up behind you, and as you can see here, I actually have my whiteboard up behind me. I always have my context set. So you have that up behind you, and that's going to basically help you to kind of promote this social emotional learning with whoever you're with. No workbooks, no downloads, no protocols. We're just going to keep it simple. So let's move on. And we're going to target all these SEL areas when we promote psychological flexibility, which is the first loop through the matrix, and also psychological safety, which we're not going to get into tonight so much. We're going to basically run you through the first loop and then see where we go from there. And all of this, of course, is done in context. So now on to this slide, and I'm taking my time so the slides catch up. And right now, the people that are online, you should see a slide that says social world of actions, and then down below, emotional world of the mind. So just to be sure, okay, good. We can see all that. All right. So now, speaking of context, here's what I did. We just basically take that vertical line, right? And for the purposes of social emotional learning, we'll take a close look at this context first. So one context we are all aware of is the experience, what we experience in the social world of action. And we use our 5 senses, again, to take in that information. And we act in the world by walking and talking, bike riding, for kids, even coming to school. And anyone can see us doing these things. And because we're humans, we're doing many, if not all of these things in the presence of others. So that's why we're talking about it and being in terms of the social world. And we model and we learn from each other also in the social world. Now, at the same time, everything we experience shows up in the emotional world of our minds. And every experience has some type of emotional shading to it. And this kind of experience is very important for figuring out how it feels when we're doing things in the world out here and just about everything else. So as we move through this, language becomes both our external dialogue, our way of communicating with others, and also our internal dialogue in terms of what we're telling ourselves, in terms of and what's showing up in terms of our wants and our don't wants. And it functions as a means of communication, as we've said, and it's running on both the inside and on the outside. So again, we're going to use language to tell stories. We're great storytellers as humans. And kids will be telling stories about themselves as they learn from their experience. So again, kids and adults use both social and emotional experiences to figure things out as they go through the day. So being aware of what we are doing on the outside and how things feel on the inside is really important for social emotional learning. And noticing these experiences and the differences between them helps us to make choices that work. Moving on to the next slide. And the next slide is really what I talk about in terms of the purpose of behavior. Again, this is our horizontal line. And as we move through that, and hopefully that is now up on the screen. If it isn't, let me know. I'll pause for a minute. It should say purpose of behavior. Okay, good. I got a yes. All right. So we all do things for a reason, and the reason will have something to do with moving toward, thank you, Sharon, moving toward what is important or who is important, or away from stuff that shows up on the inside. Okay, this guy could be in some kind of pain here, or it could be fear. Okay, and it can kind of show up inside of us and bog us down. So in the end, we're going to make choices to move us toward what we want in life, whether we're, again, 5 or 50. So students come to school to move toward education and learning, and also being with their friends. And we want them to help them notice their experiences and their interactions with others, as well as their thoughts and their feelings and their urges, to help them learn to work and come together as a class or a group and experience what we would call satisfaction and or success in their life. So what I did here very simply is we now have a different look to the matrix. It's still the same old matrix, except that at the top we have social world of actions instead of the senses. And then down at the bottom, we have emotional world of the mind. And this would be the complete visual model that you can use to ramp up your SEL, and like the regular matrix. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. It's meant to be simple, and it's going to work by adding experiences. And those would be the experiences of the learners. And also in terms of helping them to learn how to get along both with themselves and with other peoples. So it combines noticing what people are doing and what they're feeling or experiencing, and then where their actions are leading them. And that is exactly what we want our students to be doing. We want them to be learning the social skills of getting along with others and also learning how to manage themselves when they are encountering difficulties. And we all know they're going to encounter difficulties. So the matrix then, and the social emotional matrix, will help them to notice or be aware of this. And once we show them this and they get a chance to practice it a bit, they can actually learn how to do it on their own. And this is exactly what has been my experience, is that once we show them this tool, get them up and using it a bit, they will take it and they will begin to use it on their own. And this is what I would call a very effective and powerful part of social and emotional learning. So let's get to step 1. And we've already been kind of talking about it, but I want to highlight it because it's very important. And step 1, hopefully everybody can see step 1 at this point. And step 1 is going to be draw the matrix and have it up in front of your students before you begin. And that's why I, here before the webinar, have my matrix board up here behind me. Okay, so before you get started, you get into the room, you draw the 2 cross lines, you put the simple labels on there, and you have it up and behind you. And you're setting the context for social emotional learning, and you're setting the context for productive learning. And also, you don't have to mess with it. Now you can turn your attention back to your students, and then you can refer back to the board. So you have this behind you, you got the 2 cross lines behind you, and you're ready to go. So once we have that going, and again, I do want to highlight it because a lot of times what I find happens is people will talk about the matrix or explain about the matrix. No, 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 no. If you're going to ride a bike, you actually have to get on the bike and ride it. I can't tell you how to do it. I can't hand you a manual. You have to ride the bike. And the same thing with the kids. We want them to ride the bike. Doesn't matter whether we know how to do bike riding. We want them to do the bike riding. So step 2 is the actual, and beginning this now is the invitation. So once you have it up, okay, you basically would be turning to your learners and you would say something like this. Is it okay if I show you a point of view that we can use to help us figure things out and work together? And then we pause and we wait for a yes. Now, I don't know how the rest of you have experienced the matrix, but I have never had anyone say no to me. I am batting 1,000 with that. And all the kids will say yes. And this is, of course, the respectful matrix stance, and it works very well for social and emotional learning because you're beginning with an invitation and you're getting a yes. And you begin moving toward effective social and emotional learning in a classroom by showing students what you want them to do. In other words, we are modeling social and emotional learning right from the get-go. And the way you model it is when you start to have a conversation with anybody and you're just seeing them for the first time, you want to invite them. You want them to feel comfortable. You want them to come in and be a part of this process. And so often in schools, it's more of a, well, here's what you're going to do today. Now, just notice what shows up inside of you. If I point a finger at you and I say, here's what I want you to do today, okay? You're going to get basically some resistance, are you not? I know I do. So we're not pointing fingers and we're not initially telling people what to do. We're inviting them into this process because we're social creatures and we want to connect, and connecting is important. So the context of the classroom is going to be including you and the other students, and you're going to establish this respectful tone. And I'm spending a bit of time on this, and it may seem like a small thing, but when it comes to resistant or reluctant learners, it makes a huge difference because you're priming compliance in the very nicest of ways. So now we're going to be getting into step 2 a little further in. Now we're going to be getting into connecting and collaborating. So we're setting this nice flexible context, and we're moving into now the actual using of the matrix with them. So now we're going to put the matrix up. And for effective SEL, we also want people to get to doing some collaborating, do we not? Now, I don't know about you, but in my experience, schools do not do a good job of modeling collaboration. They talk about it, they write about it, but they don't do such a hot job of actually modeling it. So what we want to be doing is we want to be modeling collaboration. And we're going to do that by asking a few respectful questions. And it's really not enough just to put students in a group and say, collaborate. Another reason why this invitation is so important, and the best way to get along and do pro-social things, is to invite people to get involved. And so we're doing that. And as you hear the words, you're going to be inclined to do what? You're going to be inclined to want to go along. So the ability to collaborate, of course, is very highly valued in the workplace and continuing education. And this is a skill that businesses are looking for, higher education is looking for it. My daughter is doing applications at school now, and there's all this questions and essays about collaborating. So this is huge stuff. And we're not going to teach them how to collaborate. We are going to actually bring them into the process of collaborating so they experience collaboration. And now they know what it's all about because they're a part of it. So it's an immediately collaborative point of view, and it's going to work really well to get that SEL primed and moving. So we're going to do that quick orientation the same way we did. And the way I like to start with them would be, this is a diagram of how we learn. We take in information from our social world, and we learn things from each other, and we use our 5 senses to learn things about the world. And We see what is going on around us. We feel our feet on the floor or our fingers holding onto something. We can smell fresh food, perhaps, or how it tastes to take a bite of our favorite treat. And we spend our days doing all kinds of things. And again, they're there in front of you. So you said you had to do a lot of things before you even got in the room today, right? And you are using at least two of your senses right now. You are hearing my words and the sound of my voice, and you're also seeing me. And the rest of your classmates are also here with you. So everybody's on board. So this here, what we're looking at is our social world. And at the same time, we could all be having different emotional experiences going on inside of us. And we're going to use what's going on in our social world and what's happening in our emotional world to learn, and knowing what we're doing and how it feels to help us figure things out and make decisions. So as we go through our day, we can also either be moving toward who or what is important to us, okay, or we can be doing things to move away from stuff that we don't want. So we pretty much can notice that we move toward stuff we want, and we move away from uncomfortable stuff that shows up inside of us, like perhaps fear or anger. And I'm just going to call that yucky stuff. So then I would say, so now is it okay if I show you how it works? And I would pause. And now we're going to be getting into, moving along here, asking the 4 respectful questions, I call it. So that would be steps 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we start with the first question, right? And I'm going to ask this question: who is important to you? Now, somebody would like to just very quickly pop in there one thing, one person that is important to you as a way of chatting it in. I got a couple in mind right now. Kevin says, my wife. Yes, my wife's important to me. She's playing piano right now as I do this webinar downstairs. Anybody else want to weigh in? Sharon says, my daughter. Very nice. Yes, my daughter is important to me too. She'll be home pretty soon. So we all have important people. And what starts to happen is just what happens here. And if you do this with a group of kids, you are going to get a very long list. Oh, David, my family, great, great. You're going to get a very long list of people, and they're going to really start chiming in. And you can have a blast just with this about who's important to you. As a matter of fact, very often they will say that you are important to them, which is also kind of a nice little invitation, and it's a little way of knowing that you're on the right track if they say that. Very often little kids will say their teacher is important to them, even the big kids. So we get that little bit of flexibility going, and we get those nice feelings ramped up, primed up here. Again, social, right? We're going for the social right off the bat, right? We want to be priming up that social world that all of our students live in, right? And then as we do that, we can also be asking them, I like to ask them, and how does it feel when we're moving toward our important people? And typically they're going to say, it feels good, it feels great, I like it. And again, we're enhancing it even more. We're connecting that up. We're bringing up the important people inside of them, and we're connecting it up with the feelings. And they're learning how to connect that emotional experience with the social world. And we're doing that right there in real time. And then the next thing I do is we begin to set up the yucky stuff by moving over here to the left side of the board. And then I'll say something like, well, usually it feels good to move toward others. But sometimes as we go through our day, we will have other kinds of things or stuff that shows up inside of us in our emotional world. And uncomfortable feelings will often show up, and they are part of our emotional world too. Things like fear and anger. So you can mention this to your students, and there's a good chance that they may have noticed this kind of stuff showing up inside of them already. Unlike the good feelings we have with the important people, we usually want to get away from this yucky stuff over here. We just don't want it. So the next question that we're going to be asking is, what yucky stuff shows up inside of you and gets in the way? So now what's going to happen is you're going to be able to put their list of the yucky stuff down in the lower left. And you or they might notice uncomfortable thoughts too. I get things like, I can't, it's too hard, I'm bored, I'm tired. And you can jot all that stuff down, and they have a blast. They start seeing you write this stuff down on the board. I got another one. And before you know it, what do we have going? We have collaboration going. We have engagement going. The kids are getting into it. And we're having fun with yucky stuff. And I don't know how else you can have fun with yucky stuff. This is the best way to have fun with the yucky stuff. And they just voluntarily start to give this stuff up. It's very cool when they start having it. So what we're doing here is the students are now in the process of noticing and naming and labeling feelings and acknowledging their role in their day-to-day lives, that they show up and they get in the way. We can't stop them. Feelings show up, the stuff we want and the stuff that we don't want. And it's also being experienced. And Sasto is asking, will the slides be available later? I have a little thing at the end, Sasto, and I will be sharing with you, if you hang in there, how you can get a hold of them. So we're going to be doing that at the end. It's a good question. Yes, the slides will be here as well as an outline attached to the slides. So all of this will be available to you. So again, they're experiencing this yucky stuff in the context of who and what's important to them. Okay? Oh, you're welcome. And the noticing also allows them to be acknowledged. So this yucky stuff starts to become less troublesome, right? Talking about being angry is much different than ripping up papers and throwing your books down, because now we're learning this verbal skill of I can actually verbalize this. And then notice how well, if that's working better than having the temper tantrum, for example. And this is exactly what happens when we start using the matrix with kids on a regular basis. So they're learning the skill of having uncomfortable thoughts and feelings in the context of both their social world, what's going on right there in real time, and also how this stuff is showing up in their emotional world. And Kevin says, I will take the offer off, then put it back later. Okay, so Kevin's going to take the offer off and then put it back in later. All right, great. So, and what we're doing too is you are rewarding and them. Thank you so much. That's a great one. Oh, yes, you're getting very excited and enthusiastic as you do this. And what that is doing is we're giving them lots of positive reinforcement for participating. And that's another very cool thing, which ramps this stuff up even more. So moving on to the next question, then we're going to say, and what do you see yourself or other people doing to move away from the yucky stuff down here in the lower left? Like fear, like if it shows up, you might run. So I might give them that example. Fear might show up down here and you might go up here and you might run. And how about something like anger? What do people do when it shows up inside of them? And you usually get the yell, argue, maybe somebody might even say they hit. And, you know, these are examples. People do this pretty quickly, and it's done very quickly to get away from the yucky stuff. And the kids will really get into this now. And if you stop and think about it, they are now developing the self-awareness and learning how to talk about difficult situations and actions. Okay, they're actually being honest with themselves and with you in terms of this is what I do when this stuff shows up. And they're now seeing it, but it's in a whole different context. We are adding what we like to call in the ACT matrix world, we're adding a more flexible frame, a more flexible experience to this sticky stuff down here as they notice and become aware and start backing up off of this. So the kids get to notice their away moves. And again, they're doing it in the context of what? They're doing it in the context of who and what's important to them. And they're also looking at their moves. And the way I talk about it is as attempts to solve the problem. Okay. This stuff up here is really an attempt to solve a problem down here. So if they start getting stuck and struggling, we can look at it as like, ooh, you know, like you're trying to solve a problem right there, aren't you? You're trying, something's showing up inside of you. And I'm thinking you're trying to solve a problem. Is that right? And once you start looking at it that way, it really reduces the defensiveness and the resistance, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to look at you and kind of give you some affirmative, like, okay, so you kind of know what I'm up to. I might not know what I'm up to, but at least you see it as I'm trying to figure something out here. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So they can't be blamed for it. They're just doing what we all do. They're just being humans. And as they learn to do this, they are now beginning to do a different behavior, and they're learning the skill of self-regulation, which is another one of those SEL things, otherwise known as having uncomfortable stuff and then engaging in more workable behaviors. And these are the kinds of different, and you can do different kinds of activities. You can move different things in here if you want to kind of highlight that or play with that. But these, I'm just running you through the basics here. And I don't know of any social emotional curriculum or context out there that allows you to set up the social emotional learning this way. And this is what we call the functional contextual approach, which is otherwise known as we're noticing what works to get us where we want to go. So let's move on to that last question that we all know, which is what can you do to keep moving when the yucky stuff shows up? And that's exactly what we're going to be asking them. And your students are going to start giving you responses. And again, I like to keep it simple. I don't write a lot of words. Talk to my friend, help someone, let somebody know when I need help, these kinds of things. Show up for school, which is a big one for the older kids, right? And, do my work. These are all actions that would end up now in the upper right. And I would tell them we put them up there. So we keep them simple because we want them to be generalizable. We want the kids to be able to come up with more, and they do. They come up with a nice list, and now they can go and apply these moves to lots of different situations, not just right now, but they can say, oh, I could try this at home. I could try this with my friends. I could ask for help from my dad, for example. And so, again, it works for both in and out of school. And they will do this spontaneously because now they're learning the visual model and they're learning the language that goes with the visual model. And that all kind of gets internalized the more you do it, the more you practice it, right? It's not like you just show them this once and they all go hallelujah and walk away. No. We have to keep at this over time and help them and reward them for even this business of what we're doing right now, which is just introducing them to the into the ACT matrix. And what we're doing here is this is the beginning of committed actions, right? And we learn to accept the yucky stuff, and then we learn to commit and come up here and do something that moves us toward who and what's important to us. And then they can go ahead and try this stuff out and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, they can try something else out as well. So we're using this matrix, excuse me, I have to get a little drink of water here, getting dry. So we're going to use the matrix visually and experientially, and to frame the yucky stuff, frame the committed actions, frame all this together, because it all goes together in real life. We can't separate it out. It's all kind of occurring at the same time, but we're kind of spreading it apart. We're teasing it out this way. We're teasing it out this way for them so they can actually kind of look at it and develop a little bit of a different relation to it. And then when they're able to take this stuff with them, we call it putting it in your backpack. So you take this stuff, what goes in your backpack? Well, what goes in your backpack is the stuff you want and the stuff that you don't want. So at the end of the day, that's what we're all doing, is we're taking all the stuff that we don't want with us so we can go ahead and keep doing the stuff that matters to us. So we're teaching them how to do this in real time. And then step 7 is really going to be what I call the wrap up. And so Kevin, should I go into the next slide, or are you going to pop something up now? Let me know. All right. So while Kevin is going to chat with me, I'm just going to go ahead and move into, oh, he said it's up. Okay. So there must be something up right now that I can't see that is an offer for those of you that are online or listening later, that if you would like to receive the PDF slide, which is going to also have kind of a little mini manual that I've developed, which is more or less the transcript of what I'm going through here today, so that you can refer to it whenever you want. And my call to action for those of you that are watching or listening would be to try it out and then get in touch with me. And thanks, Sharon. So there it is, and it looks great, terrific. And get in touch with me and let me know, because I am up there and I am working to get this in, and I would like to be able to offer trainings to people. I am doing that myself around my town in my particular area. I'll be offering some online trainings later on in the school year, And I also do a little bit of live webinar stuff because I think this stuff is way cool. It is the best thing since sliced bread, to date myself. And so now, as we are moving along and you're looking at the offer, I'm going to move into the wrap up because this is the part that I like myself. So when you're all done, you thank them for helping you. And, thank you so much. You guys did a great job. And we just built a matrix and we practiced noticing the things that are important to us. We noticed the yucky stuff that shows up and gets in the way. We notice the things that we do to get away from the yucky stuff. And we notice the stuff that we can do to keep moving. Okay? When the yucky stuff shows up. And we can use the matrix to help us notice all of this and figure things out, work together, and not let the yucky stuff get us too stuck. We can use it anytime we want. And here's the kicker. I will be using it with you. Okay? We'll be using it together. And we can learn together, which is a way cool move to do with kids. That is not just something I'm giving you to do. We're going to do this stuff together as a group. So now we have the whole pro-social thing coming up. So now everyone has seen and experienced the psychological flexibility point of view. Everyone can do it. And there's no way that you can do it wrong. There is absolutely no way to do this wrong. You have set up your learners for success. They've had a good time doing it with you, and they're feeling good about themselves. And the next time you pull the matrix out, what's going to show up inside of them? What do you think would be showing up inside of them? It's going to be something they're going to want to do. And we set them up for noticing their social and emotional world and the meaning and the purpose of their actions. Now, Sasto has a question. That offer is about a business training. Yes, I also do business training as well. This stuff will work with, as I said, it works great with older people too. I use it with my other client. They all love it and they get it. It's pretty easy. I usually will hand them a copy of the matrix with the questions on it. And if you're in a business situation, you can certainly do the same thing. Now, we haven't gotten into too much of the pro-social matrix tonight, and that's on purpose. And Kevin said, yes, works with businesses too. And now here's the next thing we're going to go into. I just wanted to show you quickly. You folks online probably have seen this before. Not sure where to find the 7 steps. Okay, so if you click on the offer that Kevin had up, it will take you to a PDF. You have to kind of give me your email address. And don't worry, I don't share with anybody. And then that will take you to the download. There'll probably be a little short video too, but there'll also be a download that you'll be able to get. And if you're not able to get it that way, please email Kevin or get to me. I'm going to show you my email address at the end. I'll be more than happy to send it to you, Sasto. So here's the group matrix. And we've saved the best for last, and I don't have the time. Oh, you're welcome to go through this with you, but we could do the group matrix also with our social world and our emotional world. And we do this in classrooms. So I use this with whole groups of classrooms, middle school classrooms, high school classrooms. Oh, and there's Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. This is the link that's coming up. So Sasto, it's right there. Check that out and copy and paste or click, whatever you want to do with that. And we use this throughout the day. We have the matrix up in the classroom. We have the matrix up in the hallway so that anybody can refer to it anytime they want. And now what we're doing is we're actually looking at, once we get that psychological flexibility going, and again, this works great for business, now we're going to be promoting psychological safety. Because for learning to take place, you got to feel psychologically safe. If you don't feel safe in that room with those people, you are not going to talk. You are going to hunker down. You're going to say things like, I can't. You're going to avoid. You're going to be set up to do a lot of difficult things. So once we start getting things out on the table in terms of what's the shared purpose of our group, what are we here to do? So if it's a classroom, we're here to learn. Yay, what are we here to learn? Well, today it's English. We're going to be reading about Robinson Crusoe today. Who's with me? Oh, I got boredom showing up. Oh, okay. Well, where would that go? Oh, that's going to go over here on the, so that this would be kind of the way the dialogue goes, right? So if people kind of say that kind of stuff, that's where we're back here. We have our whiteboard. We're going to be having them do what we call sorting onto the whiteboard and putting it up there. And also, what is cool that I didn't get into tonight is the kids will want to come up and sort on the board with you. And that's a whole nother level of engagement when they're doing that, either with the individual matrix or here with the group matrix. We really know that we have them cooking, and we know that we have them engaged, and we know that they are enjoying what they're doing. Okay. Okay, so Sharon said she's not sure. Look forward to the replay. Okay. And again, anybody who needs that, I'm going to now show you at the end. The last slide is going to be how you would contact me. So then I want to show this at the end. So here we are with the social world of actions, emotional world of the mind. And the learning is really what takes place when they come up here. Okay. When they come up here and they do these moves, either toward moves or away moves, they are learning. So there's your social and emotional learning, right? So if I'm stuck, I could ask the teacher for help, or I could ask my peer for help. Or if I'm feeling annoyed and the person next to me is maybe not doing what they should be doing, or maybe bugging me, a good away move for me might be to just not pay attention to them, or what the usual word would be to ignore them. And then I could ignore them, and then I could come over here and I could do my work. And this is the kind of stuff that really starts to flex kids up, because now they start to see, when they use the matrix, they see options, they see choices, they see it in real time. You're presenting it in a very non-judgmental, accepting point of view, and we're targeting psychological flexibility. So they are learning by experience, and that's the stuff inside them that might get in the way. Okay. And they're also learning how to accept the stuff rather than let it control their behavior. And then they learn to pay more attention to what's important to them. And we also use this whole thing slows them down, because every time we use it, what are they doing? They're having to look up at the matrix, right? We want them to. And we want them to kind of look and, okay, what you're doing right now, would that be moving you toward what you want? Or are you doing that to move away from something uncomfortable for you? So we're going to be asking that question of them in real time. And then basically we want them to just go and do that analysis themselves. Is it working for them? Right? And the more we have them do that, the more this thing called choice shows up inside of them. And it's very empowering. One of the things that, again, not to knock schools, because schools are great places, but we don't do such a good job of helping kids to make choices and then learn from their experience, right? We tend to get stuck in, there's a right way and a wrong way. And that's the stuff that gets you stuck over here, right and wrong, okay? We want them to look at the workable way. What's going to work to get me where I want to go? That's the land of more choices. And if they make a choice, and it works for them, and if they come up with a plan, they are empowered, and they are much, much more likely to do that themselves. And I'm talking about young people, but I'm also thinking about the older people I work with too. And it works the same way with all of us, because at the end of the day, we're all just humans being humans after all. So that is my social and emotional learning for today. I think the last thing would be the slide, and Kevin. Oh, there he is. All right, there you go. Jumping back on.
I fixed the internet was glitching on us, sending us to my slides, but I fixed that.
Okay.
And also, when I post the email, the follow-up email, I'll make sure a link to the slides is right at the top, so people can get them.
Okay. Yeah, you're glitchy right now.
That's because both of us are on.
Oh, I see.
So I'll go back off. Bye-bye. Thanks for being here, though. This was great.
Thank you.
And you should use this in a meeting.
Thank everybody for coming. I didn't hear you. Okay, so Sharon says, you guys are great here, no glitches. Thank you, Sharon. Oh, yes. And Kevin says you should use this in many places. He is absolutely correct. I have been speaking just from the point of view of using it, schools, classrooms. you use it everywhere. I use it when I'm working with clients. I use it when I'm consulting, when I've done some business consulting. It works on all levels. Everywhere you go, you've got social stuff going on and you have emotional stuff going on. The two of them go hand in hand. And it's really simple. People pick up on it very quickly. They like it and they will take it and they'll come back to me and they'll say things like, I use that at home, for example, or, I use that in this kind of meeting, or, I had this stuck kid and I did X, Y, or Z. So that's the cool stuff about it, is that you will take it and you will make it your own. You will do it your style in your way. So this last slide is my website, Evolving Solutions. For those of you that had questions, if you wanted to contact me and discuss some training or learning or a question that you have, I'm sure happy to, you're welcome, Sasto, appreciate it. I'm sure happy to field any emails, and hopefully you found this to be useful, and go out there and do some pro-social stuff. And that's it. That's all I got for tonight. So if there's any other